Hi guys and welcome back. I've been really busy working on the Beetle recently, so I'm going to start with a little bit of an update just to show you what I've been up to, and as well as that we'll do a little quiz because everyone loves a quiz. So I've been really busy sanding the guide coat on the primer of this Beetle shell. On the inside, I've actually made, well, quite a bit of progress. I've managed to sand down most of it, including the roof area. I've still yet to do the area underneath the dash here. The dash is pretty much done as well. And I've also spent quite a bit of time just rubbing down the primer inside this area here. I haven't quite yet done the bulkhead or underneath the front balance yet. And I've also made a start in this rear area here, a little bit fiddly trying to get into all those nooks and crannies, but I'm getting there. So that needs a little bit more work too. I haven't touched the underside of the boot floor yet, kind of dreading that bit. And also I've managed just to key up these areas underneath the front and rear wheel arches. And the bonnet and also the deck lid here have been sanded back and also primered. And the doors, I still need to block down the resin coat on one side, and the other one was already done in a light coat of primer, so I really need to just get those rubbed down and re-primered on the outsides. And as for the front and rear wings, these are the rear wings here. I've sanded them back inside and out, and they're in pretty good shape. Considering how bad these wings were to start with, I'm actually pretty happy that these have come out quite straight. And yet again, the very beaten front wings, I have found a couple of imperfections which I'd like to sort out right now. But before that, let's do a quiz. So I'm going to test your Beetle knowledge and see if you guys have actually been paying attention. So at this point, it may seem that I've pretty much prepped and primed all of the car, but I haven't. There's a couple of small bits that need to be done, and I wonder if you guys can guess what they are. So I'm going to let you guys have a little think about it. What are the bits that I haven't prepped and primed yet? And I'll give you the answers after I've sorted out these front wings. All things considered, these front wings have actually come out really well. I have found a couple of imperfections, which I was kind of expecting. You're going to find a couple of imperfections as you go along in this stage, and they can be sorted right now. So one of the problems I found with this wing, which I didn't pick up from the very start, which I'm pretty happy that I found it right now, is right down here. And I don't know if you can see that there, but there's a tiny little crack here. I mean, of course I could leave this as it is, but what I'm worried about is the crack kind of coming up here, then splitting the metal, and then it becoming a problem later, and obviously rust. So what I need to do is I just need to bare metal this and just do a little local weld here, grind it back, and then we can put some primer on there. And the other wing, there's a tiny little high spot right here. And this is something that I didn't really notice to start with, but I can barely feel it. But what I'd like to do is I'm just gonna hammer that down ever so slightly, and we'll put a little bit of filler here and block it down and prime it. And another thing I'd like to address while I'm doing the front wings is the seam around here where the headlight bowls fit inside the wings are prone to rusting, and these ones are no exception. They did rust, and I have taken as much rust out as I can, and this has had that rust proofing primer on there. But what I'm left with is a slightly mottled surface. So what I'd like to do is just spray that with some Stone Guard. So that wasn't too painful, just a blob of weld over the top of the crack there, and I've just ground it back. So that's that little high spot sorted out. All I've done is I've just tapped it down ever so lightly with the bodywork hammer just to get it into a slight dent, and then I put some body filler in just after keying up that area. And as this area is quite small, you can actually get away with using stopper instead of body filler. But one thing you need to realise is that this stopper here may take overnight to dry, whereas body filler, you're looking at about 15-20 minutes. So the next thing I'd like to do is just apply a light coat of stone chip around the inside of these headlight bowls. Something you need to watch out for, there's various types of chassis kind of stone chip, stone guardy type stuff out there, and this one is an over paintable product. Be careful when you're doing this kind of thing not to order something like a bitumen tar based stuff. It's really gloopy, you won't be able to over paint it either, and it's even worse trying to remove it. And there you go, just a light coat. You can see that it's left almost like a mottly type uneven finish, but that has actually covered up any of the imperfections on that seam there. So I've just used this stone chipping black on the inside of those headlight bowls, but it has so many more uses. So something like that product is really designed to go underneath the wheel arch areas and inside your wings. But if you wanted more protection, for example, on your heater channels, now's a great time to actually spray the bottom part here and then go over it with some aerosol primer and then over with the paint. And areas like where this seam of sealant is across the back here is a little bit wonky, uneven with brush strokes over here in the corner. And you can really tidy this up just by putting a light spray across this area. And the same goes for areas like these bulkhead panels. These can look really good just by spraying some of this stuff on there, and then you can also overcoat it. So you can have it color coded, or you could just leave it black. So now's a good time to use a product like this, as you've already gone through the rust treating stage. Don't be tempted to paint this directly over rust, as it'd probably bubble up and flake off. Woohoo! Quiz time! Well, actually, it's not that exciting. Earlier on, I was talking about the bits that I haven't prepped yet, and you guys have had a little bit of time to think of all the stuff that I haven't prepped. Let's see how well you do. And yeah, leave a comment. Let me know if you managed to guess all the items that I haven't prepped yet. So in this box is a bunch of stuff that needs to be color coded, the same color as the body. So let's see just how well you guys have done guessing all the bits that I've missed out that I need to get on with. Obviously, there are no prizes, but you do get bragging rights in the comments. So this is what we've got. These are the front bonnet hinges. So both of those need to be prepped and painted body colour. We have the rear light lens holders on the rear wings. These need to be prepped and painted as well. There's the grille either side of the dashboard speedo here. That needs to be done, along with the glove box lid and even the front of this ashtray. This here is the rear number plate light, still sporting the lovely blue colour here, probably a bit of pink in there as well. And these are the rear deck lid hinges here, that the standoffs that bolt on, and then the deck lid bolts through here, along with the reinforcing parts as well. So to get all these little bits and pieces ready to be prepped for primer, there are some bits that I need to get on with first. For example, I need to take this front piece off here, off the ashtray. There's bits of trim and a grill on here. There's the catch, the alley strip here on the glove box lid. That's got to come off. There's also a number plate light there that needs to come off. So it really didn't take much to get these bits stripped down, and now I need to start prepping them. Things like these springs here can be particularly difficult to prep. I mean, really difficult to kind of get in there. So what I'll be using is the handheld shot blaster. So I'll be using 100 grit, which is a little bit finer to what I was using before, using the shot blaster, as I'm only trying to key these surfaces up for primer. So that turned out to be pretty successful. I managed to remove a lot of that old crusty paint, but more importantly, I managed to get in there on that spring area. So the bonnet hinges came out pretty good. So what I'm going to do is carry on shot blasting some of the awkward areas on these parts. So I managed to get a few more bits shot blasted. I've done the inside of these rear light holders here, and they've actually come out pretty good. The pink paint on the front though, well, that's pretty tough. It didn't really remove that, so that'll have to be sanded back. I've also managed to do the really awkward area, which is behind this rear number plate light. But on the outside, yet again, it's pretty damaged and the paint's pretty bubbly, so this will need sanding back anyway. And I've also managed to do the little deck lid hinges here, and it's kind of de-scuzzed it. It's got rid of most of the flaky stuff, but yet again, these need sanding back. And I've also done the inside of the cover for the ashtray. So I've got a bit of sanding to do. What I'm going to do is pretty much the same as before. I'll be using a 120 to a 180, and this is preparation for some primer. So I've managed to get quite a few bits prepped already. I just thought I'd mention a couple of things. First up are these grills here that go on the dashboard. If you have a metal dash on your Beetle, you'll see these either side of the Speedo. And it's just about these tags on the back. You can see there's tiny little tags. These push through the dashboard and they're just bent to one side, and this holds this grill into position. But what I've found in the past is straightening these out and then bending them, straightening, bending them, they do tend to snap off. So what I've done is, well, I haven't touched them at all. They're just in the same position as when I've taken them off. I'm not going to risk straightening them out at this point. I'll just leave them as they are. And after sanding the rear number plate light here, it's pretty obvious that I've got a couple of dents here. So what I need to do is put some filler on these areas. And these are the rear light holders, and they look pretty good. They do tend to rot out at the bottom here. There's a tiny little drain that tends to get blocked up, and they tend to rust out in this area. But both of these actually seem to be really good condition considering. But what I'd like to do, as there was a bit of surface corrosion on these rear units, is just to give them a light dust of the anti-corrosion primer. And the same goes with the cover on the ashtray. It was sporting a little bit of corrosion, so I'm just going to treat it with the anti-corrosion primer. If I spray these now, it means they'll be dry by tomorrow. So that's all these bits, almost ready for primer now. The rear number plate light here, I did have to put a little bit of body filler on there just to get it straight. The rear light holders here, they just got rubbed down, and I did put a tiny bit of aerosol rust proof primer along with the front of the ashtray. And the glove box lid and these grills, they just needed a bit of rubbing down just to get them keyed up. And then I've got these front bonnet hinges as well. These just needed to be thoroughly keyed up. They're a little bit awkward to prep, but I did most of it by hand. And these are the rear deck lid standoff brackets, part of the hinge. And all I've done with these is give them a good key up by hand, and then I've just put some rust proof primer on them. So when I was messing around with bonnet alignment and the rear deck lid alignment, I did have some problems. They weren't quite right. The back edge of the bonnet didn't quite sit on the scuttle panel, and it was the top edge of the deck lid was slightly wonky. So the first thing I did was actually switch the hinges over. These are actually all symmetrical, so you can actually just switch them over, and I've done that, and believe it or not, fitting them side to side the other way round, the bonnet and the deck lid did sit a bit better. So we know at this point that the front end of the car has had some kind of shunt, which has probably shifted the brackets at the back, because it's had quite a large impact on the front of the bonnet and the deck lid as well. I had no idea what was going on. Had quite a round area of damage on the deck lid, which has probably damaged these brackets ever so slightly. So we can assume now that they're not symmetrical anymore. I wasn't really happy with the bonnet alignment on the near side. The gap was slightly too big, and in order to bring the bonnet down slightly at the back, I just took a tiny bit of material off the top of this hinge, which is great, but now I don't know which is left and right, and it's the same with these brackets. So after these are painted and I need to refit them, I really need to know which one is left and right for the best fitment. And it was pretty easy. What I've done here, this is the near side bracket, and you can see there's a tiny little notch here. I purposely notched this one here, and on this bracket here there's a notch here. So I know that these are for the near side. So that's all those parts keyed up and degreased. I'm ready to prime. So that's all those little bits now in primer. So the inside of the grills here, the inside of the rear light housings, the inside of the glove box, rear number plate light, and the ashtray cover have been given one heavy coat of primer. And things like the bonnet hinges, the rear hinges, the exterior of the grills, light housings, glove box, And Numplate Light have been given about 3 coats of primer. And also the repaired area on that front wing has had about 3 coats of primer, and to be honest it's looking pretty good. Areas like this, they just need to be keyed up again with 800 and then that's ready for paint. So I can't do a lot now apart from wait for that primer to dry, then I can do a bit of guide coating and get those parts ready for paint. But in the meantime, I've got quite a lot of rubbing down to do before that body shell is finally ready. So I'm going to carry on with that. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you next time. Cheers! Well, give yourselves a pat on the back if you remembered the deck lid spring, because I didn't.